as well. So I thought we were talking about so many things here with certain people, and I thought that was these were the things I was supposed to talk about, which we maybe later on we will talk about a little bit. But I thought we do something different or expand the whole thing, and we talk about chances and good luck and no money and all the things that are pretty important in life beside work. So I thought if we talk about the Little Gestalten, I can't talk about the market so much because we're just 1 year old or 1.5 years old. So what can I tell you about the children's book market? Because we are still kind of babies in the market. But I wanted to tell you about the special views that we have towards certain things. And if I want to explain why I think we are a little bit different, then we have to go back a very long time in the past, into the past, and we actually start in Berlin. Not after the war as it's looking, it's Berlin after the wall came down, because actually the whole story of Gestalten started then, and I think it's nice to hear the beginning of the whole thing, because it explains a little bit like what was going on later on. And especially I thought it could be interesting to you because it started at a point, it started with zero, and it just, the Gestalten just happened because some people thought we have to do something, and which is exactly the situation you are in here. So maybe I thought you will have some fun to hear the story, and maybe you see the one or the other thing parallel going on here, which I hope you will see. And if you don't see it, I will explain it to you, because you have to know this. So this was Berlin after the wall came down, not the whole of Berlin, but parts of Berlin. So the nice thing about Berlin at that time was when the wall opened and East Berlin was free, there was a lot of freedom and a lot of free spaces. So everybody was just going crazy because you had space. It was a little bit like yesterday evening in the night when we went into the bar, that you went into the third floor at some house. You thought like, ooh, I hope it's not breaking down over my head. But no, there was a bar. And this was a great playground. People were taking over old warehouses that were abandoned since the Second World War, organized old planes from the Soviet army, and were just doing art projects with it. They were sitting on the street all the time. Nobody had money, but everybody had was happy with not having money. Everybody was doing things like Julie and Romeo were talking about just finding out what they are happy with in life, and doing projects with it. There were some problems as well. This is a very Berlin photo. Because since I think 1986 there was every year there was a big street fight, and it already turned into a tradition. And in the last years it was not political anymore. It was more like a tourist thing, like tourists fought like the 1st of May we have to fight against the police. But it stopped now because the hipsters are not tough enough. So in the middle of the 90s you had people like him. And you don't know if he is on drugs, if he's crazy, or whatever happened to him. But as you could see, everybody was happy, and nobody had a problem with people like him. And this was also the time that electronic music was growing, and you had clubs, most of them illegal clubs, because you had all the space. But Germany is quite good with bureaucracy, so there was no way to have something like this being official. So people were just entering everything and doing performances. And actually, when the techno scene was growing in Berlin, there were some connections to America, and so people from Detroit were coming over. People started to rent old factories, and this is like an old energy factory. I don't know how I call it. Energy plant, powerhouse. An old powerhouse is power plant. And they made clubs in these locations, and then there was the Tresor, which was an old bank, and in the cellar, in the basement of the bank, there was the Tresor, like where they put all the money, and it was old, and they started a club there. And actually, the Gestalten was a design agency in the beginning, and they were coming to Berlin. Actually, all of them were industrial designers. None of them was a graphic designer, and because they came to Berlin because of this. And they were partying all night, and because they were connected to all of this, the techno scene, they started to do the flyers and the record covers for all the techno people, and they designed. Then the scene was growing. They were doing more and more, and they already the Gestalten worked with the computer. This is my generation. When I learned graphic design, there was no computer. And when we, towards the end, we had something like this. This is the very first Macintosh. It doesn't have a hard drive, so if you work on it, you are changing the diskettes all the time, because there is one diskette with a hard drive and one diskette with the, how do you say it? Diskette, yeah. The one with the program. So if you do something, you work, then you have to save it, then you have to change the diskettes and to work on it, and when you have the next thing going on with the program, you have to change it again. The concept is totally crazy, but we didn't even learn it in school. So there was one shop in Berlin that had things like that standing around. You can kind of rent in. You go there and then you paid 5 marks, and then you could sit 1 hour at the computer to work there. That's how we learned computer. Or desktop publishing. And this was happening at several places. The Gestalten started working with this. I did something like this, and other people. And at a certain point, the Gestalten put everything together. They all the connections from the techno scene and working on the computers, doing all the flyers and the covers. And they said like, hey, let's do. This is something new going on. There's this crazy music that we are dancing to, and there's this graphic design that is done with computers. Of course, it looked different, because before we were doing the graphic design with hand, and now you were doing it with a computer. And with every new program, new people went crazy, and then there was like, do you know Photoshop? What you can do with it? And then all these very ugly things were happening, because there were new filters, and when there was like a fisheye, everybody was using fisheye. And the next 2 months, you were running through the city and you had posters and everything like, oh, that's the filter from Photoshop, the new one. And there was a new typeface, and everything was with the new typeface, because it was the only thing that looked different to the boring things before. So Gestalten decided to do a book about what was going on, and they called it Localizer 1.0, the Techno House book. And of course they didn't have money. But they knew that when they are doing the book, they can sell it, because there were a lot of fans. So what they did, they just put an advertising in a techno fanzine, saying like, we are doing the book. If you want to buy the book, we'll pre-order it now. And over 1,000 people in Germany sent back the pre-order, the sheet, like the coupon or whatever you say, the boucher. And sent it back to Gestalten, and then they just took a shoe carton, a box for shoes, and put in all the sheets, 1,000 prescriptions, and went to the bank and said like, hey, we have the idea for the book. Here are 1,000 people who want to buy the book. We only need money. And the bank said like, sounds pretty good, and actually gave them money to print the book. So they started with the books. They were calling people all over the world that were doing techno as well, and people were sending little diskettes with their material. And so they started putting together this book on this computer, which meant that they actually were doing every single page as a single document, because there was not enough memory to have more than one page. They couldn't work on more than one page at the same time. So then the book was printed, and they started sending the book to people all over the world. It was already in English, as you can see, because it was a community. The techno community was a community all over the world, so they did it in English and were sending it back to the people that sent them the material. Because of this, they started they started a distribution system that works worldwide, which is the main difference of Gestalten to many publishers. Many publishers only work in their own country. They are like a national publisher, and Gestalten from the beginning, because of this and because nobody knew how the book market works, what books are, because Gestalten were coming from a very different angle, they started to say like, okay, we can distribute the book by ourselves worldwide, and they were asking people in different countries, in the UK and in the US, we have the book, we want to sell it there, are you taking care of the distribution? So they were going to independent publishers, and so the book started to being distributed worldwide. And that was the concept that still works till today. It also works with the Kleine Gestalten or with Little Gestalten. That's why I'm explaining it. That we don't sell licenses to different countries, but actually doing German and English books and selling them by ourselves in these countries. Which sometimes is a problem, but I explain that later on. So this is the inside of the book, and it was very kind of radical then, but it looks pretty ugly today. But it's just a temporary thing. That's how graphic design with computer looked in the middle of the 90s. Yes. I wasn't with the Gestalten at that time because I was doing different things. I'm coming from a different scene, and techno wasn't so my thing, but I was doing books, I was doing things like this, cover for digital hardcore recordings, which was like it was like a radical political, radical electro-punk thing, a complete label, like a little scene, and they were doing music on things like that. But at a certain point, I joined Gestalten just to work there because these were these kind of people, even when they were listening to music that I didn't like, still they were doing the right thing. So I thought like, yeah, maybe it's nice. And 2 years later, I already started to, I was doing like flyers as well and record covers, but then I was doing a book like this. It's a follow-up of the other book. And it's more a philosophical book, but it already started to be a little bit more graphic design already because the computers were going better and better and you could do different things. And so we are doing experiments with graphic design with different languages. This is a 2-language book, and doing stuff like that. And as time went on, actually the Gestalten became not that kind of special techno blah blah publisher anymore, but we changed into being a design publisher. So this was the first design compilation. Compilation means that a lot of people, that you have a book and a lot of people are showing their stuff. And for this book it was still pretty funny because there was no email and no internet, and we actually were calling people all over the world. Hello, can you send us your record covers? We saw them in the record store. We want to put them in the book. Then they were sending it. Then we had boxes and boxes of record covers and other stuff. And actually we had to scan it, we had to retouch it, and then we had to put it in. So a book like that actually took 8 months to do from the beginning, from the first call, and calling again because they were not answering, they were not sending something like, hey, what's going on? Doing this, and then calling people in Canada and Tokyo people, they don't understand you. So it was quite complicated. So, but finally we had booked together, and it already looked like a little bit more like design books look nowadays. This is from 1999, so it's 17 years old, but it already, I think, looks quite a little bit more contemporary. There were strange kind of illustrations already in it. This is E-Boy from Berlin, who are only doing like pixel illustrations for 20 years now. And moving on from there, the whole range of books we were doing was getting wider. So first it was just music, then it was graphic design, and then it went on, and the first illustration books started to come in. And at that time I decided for myself that I like illustration as a form of graphic design much more than most of the very cold this is a very cold graphic design, and I think illustration has more emotionality. You say there are more emotions into illustration. So I was pushing the other people away and said, like, illustration is mine. and free graphic design and collage, and then I was fighting my corner, and till everybody accepted that I'm the one for illustration, and so I had my little own empire in the big empire, and was doing illustration books. And so the idea came up. This is 2003, which is 12 years ago, to do illustrated a book of Mr. Fairy Tales of the Grimm brothers, but which has more new illustrations, because the book market with illustrations and children books at that time was, for me, excuse me, I don't want to hurt somebody, but it was pretty conservative. So we were like, whoa, we don't like the illustrations like they are now. We want to show something different, something more our way. And so I was editing. I was asking the people. I was selecting people that I wanted to have in the book, and was asking them to illustrate the stories. This is Rilla, which is a good friend, and I totally love her stuff because it's reduced but still very cool. So we had more contemporary stuff that looks a little bit weird. If you look at it nowadays, it's a woman from Japan who has a more kind of manga style. But at that time it was like we just wanted to try. We didn't want to ask for permission. We just wanted to do something different, just to show, hey, you can do it different. We don't need to do it like everybody's doing it. We just try. And of course it was with all the graphic designers, it went well, but with the children book markets, they were like, what's that? This is much more children-like. Then I even tried to do something by myself, because one illustrator jumped off with scissors cut stuff, so I tried it just by myself, and it was nice because there was the freedom just to do it, and so I just did it. And from there on it went, when the first wave of computer design was over, people started to realize that design with computer is pretty cold, and you can't get the real emotional feelings into computer design, and people started to come back to illustration and mix graphic design, or computer graphic design with illustration. And that was exactly the point where it became very interesting for me, because that was, for me, was like a kind of rebirth of illustration, as I see it. And so we did compilations like the Elusive line, where we were gathering more modern illustrations. This book is now 10 years old, and which is funny, because if I look at it now, it still looks somehow modern, although it's already 10 years old. You already know the aesthetics, but still these aesthetics are used or still in nowadays life. And the book looked a little bit like this, and it presented our view how we see illustration in a modern way, with a strong graphic design touch. A graphic design touch, not in a cold way. I like the pissing man there. Not in a cold way, but these illustrations are different to classic illustrations, because I think there's a different way of composing the pictures, and you have lots of colored areas. It has a very straight style, and I think the communication, what you want to show, is very, very clear. And that's what I thought is really interesting. Not with this one. This was more like tattoo stuff, but still, we were looking. I was looking just for stuff that uses some different qualities. So this went on. Stina Persson is somebody who I like a lot. She's from Sweden, and she has a very reduced aquarelle kind of scissors cut collage stuff. And as this book was selling quite well, because we have to talk about money, of course, as well. I mean, you can't do. When I said it started with that, with going to the bank and asking for money, that was just the first book, but the whole company was actually built up on a first book that was that was done with the money by the bank, because there were a lot of people wanting the first book, and so it was going on. So that is the main difference to what Julie and Romeo were talking about. They have that DIY spirit, they want to have that DIY spirit going on, and that is fine for them, because that is something in itself, is something cool. With this, we really wanted to do books, and also we wanted to do books that are selling, because we wanted to get our message out, and we wanted to have people look at how we see things. So of course we wanted to have the books. We wanted to sell books, and also because it became our job, and we wanted to eat something. So this was a decision. That's the difference. It was not something like that's my free spirit. I want to support that, but I get my money somewhere else. For us, it was more like we want both. We want to make a statement, but also this is our job, and we want to yeah, that kind of worked out quite well. Then we were going on, and there was a second part of the book, and there was a third part of the book, and then it went even farther, like it was broadening the whole range. And there was a time when all this retro stuff was coming back, and I was researching a lot on the internet, because actually I'm not a graphic designer anymore. Now I'm an editor. Because from the first book, I was a graphic designer, but the more I thought about the content, and the more I thought about the concepts, I became an editor. And an editor means, with us, an editor means you come up with an idea. In example, this book, I was researching in the internet. I saw a lot of vintage stuff, and I thought, like, there's something in the air, something that we should grab, something that we should have a statement about what is going on. Then I was researching, then an editor, or we as editors, we are researching, and we are looking through the internet what we have, and we make big piles of works, virtual piles at the computer. So we have folders with tons and tons and tons of material. What's exactly what you do with Pinterest nowadays. This we were doing before without Pinterest. And then you are looking at the stuff, and then you think, like, what is the essence of what we have here? Like, you have 50 photographs, and then you look at the 50 photographs, and then you think, like, okay, where's the common factor? And then you find out, like, okay, this and this and this picture are stamped as well for the others. So these 5 pictures are like the monuments, like the columns of the book. So you can say, like, this is this corner, this is there, and this is there. And you automatically already have a kind of dramaturgy, like because you can say, like, it starts there, this is pretty easy to understand, and this is very complex. And all the other materials, you look at the quality, if it's fitting, and then you can make, like, it's like a movie. You have a storyline like in a movie. You begin somewhere, and then you take all the bits and pieces and glue them together till you have a whole book in a line. And that is really interesting, because for me, editing is a kind of creative work. It's, I'm not creating something by scratch, like you do as illustrators. When you create something, you start with nothing, you take your pen, and you start doing something. I collect stuff, a lot of stuff, and then it's more like I'm collecting like a big mountain of stones, and then I'm taking away stones till I have a sculpture. So my way is more kind of destructive creativity, because I throw away all the time, and yours is more like a constructive way. But I totally like deconstruction, so it's fine with me. And when we were exploring, like, what illustration can be. Illustration is not only drawing, but illustration can be a lot of different things. And so I thought, like, for me, this is illustration as well, although it's more kind of collage, graphic design, whatever. But I never thought about, like, is it illustration, collage? Who cares? It looks good, and the way it's really interesting, because you think about how does that person, then Mountfort, came to the idea to construct an image like that. So that's the main thing. This is even more graphic design. Still, for me, it's illustration because, an example, here to the left, that has this kind of speech bubbles, are a very, very simple kind of form of illustration, and illustration is communication. Oops. Then we had something like this, which is more normal illustration. And of course, if you talk about illustration in a wider scale, you have to talk about collage as well. So I was researching a lot for collage of things that have that were not in a collage in a classical way, but try to find new ways of working with collage. And then we also had some very classic illustration things, because that's what that's what our job is like, to look for new trends that are going on. I mean, Gestalten is over the years became something like we're smelling the new trends, and then we try to do book about these trends. And what's nice about Gestalten is because we have that independent distribution system worldwide, we actually can start. Go back to this book. This book. The idea for this book was coming up in the middle of November 2000. I don't remember it, but the idea came up in the middle of November. Then I was doing some research to convince my boss to say, so he is saying, okay, that's a topic, we do the book. So I had to do some research. I was saying, like, Robert, let's do the book. Then he was convinced, then we said, okay, we do the book. Then I was doing more research, and the book was in the shops worldwide in May. So it was a little bit more than 6 months from the first idea till the book was in the shops, not in the shops only in our hometown, but all over the world. And that's what Gestalten, what was really different with Gestalten to many other publishers, because the most publishers are going to fairs, try to sell their books to other countries as licenses. And we just, because we don't sell licenses, we just do the book. We could be pretty fast, and often we were the first ones that had a new kind of design as a book there, because we did not have to catch. You know what I mean? Then this was a very popular topic, because out of a sudden everybody was drawing maps. So we thought, like, okay, we do a book on maps. And then, of course, if you think about illustrations, then you automatically end up with children's books illustration, because children's books are one of the few topics, or one of the few markets where an illustrator actually can work as an artist, as a creator, as an author and illustrator at the same time. And so I said, like, let's do a book about children's book illustration, because there are a lot of new things going on. And then I went to Bologna and was researching, and out came the book like that. And yeah, so there we tried to picture like a kind of new generation of children's book illustrators that have a little bit of view like we have, a little bit more modern or experimental, but still that's the main thing. Children's book illustrations that still work for children, because in the children's book market you often have very arty books that are actually art books that are sold as children's books. And our point of view is that we would like to do books that are still children's books, that are still working for children. Thomas in there as well. Then there are people in like Oliver Jeffers. We did another book with him, with his art stuff. I thought I'd show this to him because I once saw a lecture of him and this was really interesting because he's actually a fine artist. He was at the art school. He wanted to be a painter. Well, he is a painter. But his diploma project was a children's book. And actually, when the project was finished, he just sent 3 copies to 3 different major companies in the US, and actually all 3 of them answered in between 3 days and wanted to do the book with him, which is really amazing. But which also shows that if you really think about what you are doing, not just I draw whatever happens, but he is a really conceptual guy. He really thinks a lot what he's doing in his books. And he was telling about the double spread, like there or down there. He often only has like 1 sentence or just 1 word in his pictures, and he really thinks for weeks and weeks and weeks. He tries to reduce what he has on the page, so it's really just the core of what he wants to say. Like if you can put in as much as you want, but the more it is, your message is gone, because it's much too much, and people do with it what they want. And Oliver Jeffers is really reducing everything to as much as possible. And after this book, the idea came up, like there are so many great illustrators. Maybe we should do children books by ourselves. And actually, now I have to show some older stuff that we think are classic children books that we really like, because they already have that kind of graphic approach, which is Dick Bruna, who's very famous for Miffy. You probably know, but I totally like stuff like that from him. It's really dark illustrations, and I love it. The dead Snow White. And of course, Tommy Umura, because his humor is great, and his composition, I mean, how cool is it? It's like 30, 40 years old, and he is nearly showing nothing, and still it's so cool and so strong. And that would be exactly a book that we would like to do, because everything, it's a very human book. The story is very, very touching, and the graphic design is great. The illustration is good. And of course, Eric Carl, who is using collage as a way to illustrate. And that's now we are with the Little Gestalten finally. That's how we started. Like I think in Germany 1.5 years ago. In the US we started 1 year ago. In Germany we are called in German-speaking countries we are called Kleine Gestalten, which is the same as little, and for the English books we are called Little Gestalten. Then I was looking for some nice quotes that we can give to people, so they don't have to think about it, but already know that we are good. And then we started with like 6-7 books, which is just to show, hey, here we are. And that's it. The other difference of what we are doing, most of these books are not by ourselves actually, because we're editors, we are hunters and gatherers. We steal books from all over the world and translate them to German and English. So actually, from these 7 books, there are only 2 books that we did by our own, the alphabetics and the zoo thing. The other books are licenses from Norway, from France, from Germany actually. To the right, the one with the photo is a German book that we did in English, and the 2 others from France. Because we are actually very small with Kleine Gestalten. Actually, it's just me and Noelia and Maria. Maria is a project manager, and Noelia is an editor as well. We actually don't have the manpower to create books and books and books and books. That's the one point. The other point is that there are so many great books, and that are only existing in their own country. So it totally makes sense that we are more like a distributor of nice books. We find books we are really like searching on a flea market. When we're at the fairs in Frankfurt or Bologna, we really literally go in every corner and look for the last book if there is something. It's like finding like that really rare record from the 60s. And actually, that's the way we found some really great books, like the second from the left, Elsa. It's a really small Swedish company, and there was a talk, and they just had like 6 books, and there was this one book woman was sitting there and the book was exactly behind her stool. So I really had to crawl behind her to get the book because I just saw the colors somehow blinking. I had to get the book out of behind her, taking care that I don't touch her butt. And while she was having a license talk to somebody else. And the book was just great, and then I just left her just a card, and then I was going away, and yeah, that worked out. And that's a lot of the work we are doing, not just creating some by yourself, but also looking for nice stuff all over the world to bring it together. And I think this is one of the qualities of the Little Gestalten, that we are trying to gather stuff from different countries or from different corners and create something new, which is exactly the same what we did with the books that I was showing you before. We were looking for a lot of different stuff that comes together, and then we, because of all selection of our editing, that's where the editing comes in, because of that editing, is created something new. It's a little bit like with the fanzines, what Julie was saying, like there are fanzines all over the world, but only because they were gathering all the fanzines and were doing the tour, this became, then it gets a very different approach. So that's how it looks at Frankfurt, a little yellow corner. And now we start with the one or the other book, so you know what we are doing. This is from France. And actually it's a love story. It's very retro, about an engineer, Eiffel, who built the Eiffel Tower, who was an engineer and in love with this woman, with his husband, with his wife. And but she became ill, and so she became ill, and nobody knew what to do. And then they found out that she needs fresh air, so he built the Eiffel Tower so she can go up there and can breath the fresh air. And that's so cute, like the shadow is crying. And about the books that we are doing, as I said, I don't care so much if we came up with the idea or somebody else, but we are actually looking always for the different layers of a book. So there should be a visual layer, so it should have a certain visual appeal, because that's where we are coming from. We are a visual book company, so people also expect books from us that look a little bit different or have a certain visual appeal. But we're also looking for, look that we have also a different layer of emotion. I mean, that you have, with picture books you always have the image, then you have the text, but what's really important about the picture book is what is in between the text and the image, because that is exactly the message that is transported. And then we're coming back to graphic design and communication. Illustration is communication. And if you have an image like that, and you have a text, then both together make something with you, which is happening in your head, and that is what makes books so lovable. If books reach you somewhere there, and especially there and there, and if books really can do this, then a book is great. But you really have to think about it. You have to how this can work out. We'll talk about this later on, because when I'm okay. There's some more, which is really interesting, because Chris yesterday said in the US you have all these boxes. You have these age boxes, and you have picture books, and non-fiction books, and you have this and this. And it's really strict. It's the same in Germany. This is a book from France that we did in Germany and in the US, and this is a mixture of a graphic novel and a picture book. And we actually had total problems to promote the book, because all people in the US were like, but what is it? Is it a picture book? Is it an illustrated textbook? What is it? And we were like, it's cool. But they didn't understand, so it was not that easy. But actually things are changing all over the world, because my belief is that books like that, even if they look a little bit avant-gardistic to the mainstream right now, I'm pretty sure in 5 years this is much more mainstream than it is now. Which is nice, because now we're at the point where we can do some more experimental stuff, but at least we can try and find out, because I mean people are totally, we are living in a design world. There's IKEA, there's iPhone, and you have design everywhere. So why not have cool designed, cool children books that have a little bit more of an avant-garde feel, but still are working with kids. Then we have something like this, which is like a mixture of Alice in Wonderland and Coco Chanel. And the illustrations in here are a little bit like fashion illustrations, because the illustrator is a fashion illustrator. And I thought, but the story is very nice, because it's actually, as I said, a mixture of Alice in Wonderland and Coco Chanel. It's taking place in Paris. And there's this old woman living on the top of a building, and when you enter her rooms, the rooms are not just rooms, but there's a whole world in there, and the little girl just accidentally is going in there, and then there's that whole world of Mademoiselle Oiseau. And we totally like the idea, we like the illustrations. But even a book like that is not that easy to bring to the people. They are a little bit confused sometimes. Then of course, we also do one or the other pop-up book. This is from Gerardo Monaco, who is from Argentina, but is living in Paris. And he's a very nice old man who is a great paper designer. This is a very simple book of him, but we like it because it's so simple. This actually is a book that we did by our own, finally. And it's a non-fiction book. It's explaining the body. So it's pretty straight. And the illustrations were done by a company that not talking to them, and we had to find a way that it's somehow informative but not as cool or clean. So, and what was coming out in the end was I thought quite good, because it's informative, but it still has a certain something new. It's not too informational. Okay, so it's more informational. But this is the favorite page of Maria. She always sees this like an avant-garde poster. Look at this. This is another one from France. I was talking to Willy the day he arrived, because this is it's a book where you can pop out masks, so the kids can play along to the story. It looks like this then in the end. But as you can see, the hunter has a gun. So no, in America and the US, the woman who takes care of the promotion said like, no way. And we were like, sorry, but just last week a 4-year-old kid shot a 5-year-old kid in your country. This is a total pacifistic book. It's about like how the animals trick out the hunter. But she said, no, I know, it's good, it's pacifistic, it has the right message, but he wears a gun and we can't do that. And then you're sitting in Berlin and think like, the world is not as easy as you think in Berlin. This is a book that we will publish soon, and this is, I think it's actually the best book that we will or have that we have. It's from a Norwegian publisher, and it's about death, as you can see. It's written by a woman who actually is an actor, but works as a clown in hospices, in hospitals where children that are about to die, where they are taking care of them. And she works there as a clown, and she wrote that book about death, and it's a very philosophical book, and for me I think it explains in the best way the many layers that a picture book should have. For me, it has good illustrations, it has a very poetic text, and what the combination of illustrations and text does with you is just, I mean, everybody who was reading the book was just sitting there and like, exactly. I can't explain it. I will send it to you when it's printed, and you can judge by your own. That's when death is, the metaphor for death is the girl in black, and the metaphor for life is the girl in red. And then it's, yeah, I am deaf, I'm a part of life, a part of love, and a part of you. And I think that is a nice message. Talking about metaphors, a lot of our books use metaphors, or I think children books, that's one thing I love about children books as well, is that often you use metaphors to explain much more complicated things, because that's what the children books are for. You have complicated things like death, like separation of parents or whatever, and you have to bring down that very complex topic. You have to break it down, so you have to go down you have to look the kids eye to eye, because you have to explain it on their level. You can't be there like you know, it's like this and that. No, it's not working. You have to go down and you have to say like, okay, this is your level of communication, dear kid. So we have to talk on your level. And when we do books, we always look for books that are exactly working on that level, because otherwise it's not working. And using metaphors is a good way to explain things. Like in this case, death is impersonated by a girl. And some things like that are the tools to do children books, so they are working on a wider level with a universal approach. I was just not here, but I will explain later on. So actually, now this was what I wanted to say about Little Gestalten, but as we were having several discussions and conversations here, I thought I have some more topics I want to talk about shortly. So if you want to say something, just get in. Don't wait for the microphone. Because as I already said, I just wrote this down so I don't forget it, because I think it's important. So I just go through the words and explain, and if you want to say something, then just say. It's just, as I said, so I don't forget it. For me, illustration is not illustration in a way of drawing or doing illustration, but it's mainly a form of communication. Because what is illustration for? Of course, it can be deco. You can make a nice border at the wall, but that is not the illustration that I see. The illustration I see is mainly communication. There is something you want to say, and you say it by an image. That's what Tom was explaining also. And you have to think, like how you think always, you think about what words you choose to say something. Sometimes it's a little bit more rude, sometimes it's a little bit more nice, but you think about how you say it. And of course you have to do the same thing with illustration. So illustration is communication. You want to say something without words, without typeface. And I think this is something that you always have to remember when you're doing an image. If it's not for you, not for yourself, but for somebody else, you should think about what that illustration makes with the one who is looking at it. Of course. Sorry, I don't want to be pretentious or sound like a teacher. It's just I just want to make it clear. So, perfection. As you already could see, I don't care about perfection at all. I think the main thing about illustration is personality, because the emotional thing is what makes your illustration special. I mean, there's so many illustrators all over the world, and how will you compare with all the other illustrators? And they're good, they're pretty good, just go to the internet, to Behance or whatever. So the difference between them and you is your personality. So if you want to do something special, you really have to think about yourself, what person you are, because, I hope it's right, yes, because you as an individual are, individual, is that right? You as an individual are individual. Okay, I hope you understand what I mean. So you have to know a little bit about yourself if you want to make a statement that is special. If you don't know who you are as a person, what can you say, what can you offer other people if you don't know who you are by yourself? Of course, you don't know who you are until you're dead, because you're changing all the time. Which doesn't mean that you have to kill yourself all tomorrow. But you should reflect on yourself. You should reflect on yourself
to find a way of communicating. It's so funny, it's totally honest. I actually mean that. Well, then something else, we were talking about chances and good luck. You can plan things, but it never works out as you are planning it, as you already experienced here. So what I really think is important in life, and especially when you're working as an illustrator or a creative person, you have to give the chance a chance. You have to make room that things can happen. Like Julie was doing it when she was driving around Europe with the fanzines. A lot of things were happening. It wasn't clear. We are there, we show 25 fanzines or so. No, it's open. And they gave the chance a chance. And that's what you have to do, because then the luck is starting to kick in. Because we had that as a topic with some of my students, because they were doing interviews with illustrators. And the illustrators, they were like, how did you become a famous illustrator? Well, actually I had luck. I was a lucky guy. And they were like, what's luck? What do you mean exactly? And so we were a little bit thinking about what's luck. And actually luck is when if you do your things, you go on, you don't stop, and you are open. Having luck is just being open towards things that are coming to you. And if you stop on, you just go this way, you won't have luck, because luck is there. And if you go this way, then luck can't reach you. But if you're going like this, then the chance is much bigger that you hit luck by accident. And I think this is pretty important. My pencil is too short, my pencil is too long. So these are the things that you hear all the time, and it's like, oh, come on. It's limitations are making the whole thing very funny, because if you only have one color, then you have to think what you can do with one color, with two colors. So, and actually limitations are often the motor to start something new, because if you don't have money, what are you doing? It's exactly what Julie was doing with the fanzines. You don't have money, but you want to have your meaning, your opinion, you want to have it out to the people, so you have to think. And that's how a lot of good things started, and that's why I actually was showing you all the long way down how the Gestalten started. There was no money, but still they wanted to have the book out, so they were doing the advertising, and people were getting the prescriptions back. Nowadays you do something like that with Kickstarter or whatever, I don't know, maybe you rob your parents, but somehow limitations are good, they are not bad. You have to use what you have, and you have to, it's too complicated, you have to take advantage of your limitations. I think my English is worse than... this I show you again because, not because of limitations, because of something else, but it's here now. It's the story of Planeta Tangerina, which is a publisher from Portugal. It's so sweet. Actually, they are friends from school, I think before high school even. It's a group of 4 or 5 people, they know each other since they are kids. And they started to go on, they went to high school, to art school, and they stick together all the time, and they had, like you are doing it. They were a little group of people, they had an atelier together, and then they started to do children's books. And because they didn't have money, or not enough money, they were working as illustrators or graphic designers next to it, were doing like corporate jobs to finance their children's books. And actually that was their way to buy themselves freedom. They were doing corporate jobs to do the children's books that they wanted, without asking somebody. Visual language. As I already said, Little Gestalten, when you walk over the fair in Frankfurt, and you see all the publishers, and then you come to Little Gestalten, and often it looks a little bit different. At least I hope it looks a little bit different. It does it. And so sometimes people are coming into a little booth, and they were like, "What is this? It looks so different." And we are like, "Yeah, we just have nice books." And they're like, "But why?" And then they try to find out why it looks different, and that is our visual language. And we were talking with Guido, the example, or also with Ota, we were talking about visual language. That is something interesting, and because here you are this group of people that has a lot of energy and is ready to start, and you start developing your own visual language, which is totally great, and which is something you should do you should do in a very reflective way, that you not only think like, what can I do, how do I do it, but you should reflect on each other, help each other to show the other what's good with him or what's not as good, to develop that visual language. And I think even you can go even one step further. You should think about what is the visual language of your generation in Georgia, because you are the illustrator generation in Georgia. So maybe you think about that. We were talking about it like the Polish people. They have in Poland you have a tradition of graphic posters. Somebody started it somewhere. I'm not fit in art history, but somebody started it, and all the time somebody's starting something new. It's never 500 people with a lot of money. It's always just 5 people with no money. It's it's like the Sex Pistols, like the skateboarders in LA that invented the new skateboarding. All these people started with nothing. They were sitting around. They didn't know who they are. They didn't know where to go. They were just bored and they wanted to have fun. Which is exactly what I experienced yesterday evening. No, not exactly. You're one step further. But I just wanted to say, think about active about a visual language and help each other to construct it. Perspectives, I already had that. If you want to talk somebody, you have to know who you're talking to. And I think, who was it yesterday? Tom, was it you? No. Was it? No, it was Roger. Roger said like, we are not illustrating for the kids. We are actually illustrating for that one kid. But that one kid is existing millions of times. But we are exactly illustrating for one special kid. And this is you have to think, if illustration is communication, you should think, you should know who are you talking to and how this person is talking on. Creating by editing, I already explained, like destructive. And actually, what I think is also really important is if you just stay with, as an illustrator, you just stay with illustrations, then the perspectives, what you're looking at is really small. And when I said in the beginning that the Gestalten was founded by industrial designers, they were doing graphic design, but they were industrial designers. So it doesn't matter if you're who was studying architecture actually? You, exactly. But that's exactly the thing. Like, take concepts from architecture, from movies and so on. This is the interesting thing. If you take more philosophical concepts and if you try to turn them over into even children book illustration, sometimes there are pretty concepts that you can adapt pretty easily, it makes you think in totally different directions, and that's so cool. It's so important. Which doesn't mean that you have to illustrate pictures from Tarantino movies, what some people do. That's not what I mean. Yeah, don't expect help from anybody. Nobody will help you. You can be sure. But when you start something by your own, and you show the people that you can do it by your own, then people will come and help you, because they already know there is something to build on. If you just go there and like, give me some money, then they are like, what for? I want to have something back. That's how it is. And so if you want help, you have to make clear that you are worth being helped by. And don't expect it, because you are good enough. But all that you need is you. And if at the second step, people will come by themselves, because when you're ready for it, the people come by themselves. It takes sometimes quite a lot of time because of money. Because actually, I think it's the last point, because we have to talk about money. Because you can do art and you can do illustration or children's book illustration in a bubble, and you can get your money from somewhere else. But you are becoming illustrators, and your illustrator is your profession. And as a profession, you should be paid as a profession. If you're something else, you get paid as well. And if you're an illustrator, you should get paid. So you, with every concept of being arty and whatever you are, always think about how this could work out. Not in a negative way that you like this commercial. Commercial is a very weird thing, but. As I said in the beginning, you can do children's book and you can give them there and there and there. But working with a market and thinking about where your book can be sold and thinking about all of that makes you stronger with what you are doing, because you're much, and also money. What I actually, it sounds strange, but actually that kind of art projects that just hang in the air. After like 20, 30 years looking at that, sometimes I'm a little bit tired of that, because you can do everything and say it's art, and then it's somewhere, but you don't have a reference to real life. And I want things that are cool to have a reference in real life, and money is one of the references. And so, which doesn't mean that you should sell out or whatever. I don't care. But think, money makes money. It's important. And if you hate money, still think about what money, how money is in the whole thing, in the whole system. The market boxes I already explained, and now the universal approach. That was a joke I was doing with Roger all the time, because when we were sitting in a jury, I said to one of the things, I said like, this is a universal approach. And I said it because it was something that I thought is a kind of illustration that works in many different countries all over the world, which is what I mean with a universal approach. So it's not like we are talking about the Iranian illustrations that are very special, really cool, but are also very regional. So like the aesthetics are pretty clear, they are coming from there. And the universal approach, with universal approach I mean it's something that is a little bit the same all over the world. And Roger hated the idea because he's coming from Brazil, and he's absolutely right. Roger and Joko said like, Henny, that's the Western Europe looks that you have. And I said like, oh fuck yeah, you're right. And still, so they are right, but I'm right as well, because the universal approach is, if you think about illustration or children's books, you should not only think about it should be what I said with the metaphors. It should be so boiled down and simple that because of this simplicity, everybody all over the world might understand what you're saying. It's already the same thing with the perspective. The clearer and the more reduced you are, the better is the chance that people in foreign countries will also understand you, and in the end, maybe then also your book will be sold there. Coming back to the money. So so I just show you like two things. That doesn't mean I don't judge them. I just show you what on the market, to come back to money and market, works as a universal approach. This book by Polish duo was sold, I think, more or less 1 million times all over the world. It's an atlas, probably you know it as well. It's an illustrated atlas of the world for kids, and it's not even, it's quite expensive. I think like something like 30 euros or so. It's like a really big atlas. And for certain reasons, all over the world, people are going crazy for the book, and it's sold all over the world, and it sells, and sells, and sells, and sells. And I think everybody's like, whoa. And of course, the 2 years after they illustrated the books, there were like 20 other atlases trying to jump on the train as well. I have to admit, even we have one. I didn't want to do it, but it was more a pretty ridiculous decision. And then there is another book which is even more strange. The people that were in Frankfurt probably know this, The Secret Garden. This book makes me cry all the time. It's done by an illustrator who actually designs wallpapers, and it's a coloring book for adults. And it's so successful that there in Frankfurt, more or less every publisher had something like this by its own. Because I think this sold like this and the book, the follow-up book was sold like 15 million copies all over the world. And I think Roger's not here now, but it's so funny. I think it sold like 2 million copies in Brazil in just 2 months. So it was like the best-selling book in Brazil for 2 months, which is crazy. We were even making jokes about it, that they're probably doing it as a wallpaper for the favelas or something like this. I don't know. I don't even think that the people are coloring in. But this is what I mean with universal approach. Somehow this book, whatever you think about the book, it's well done, it's fine. But whatever you think about the book, this seems to have that kind of universal approach that it's working all over the world. You have to find out by yourself why. If I knew, I would invite you to my villa in the Bahamas. There's Oliver Jeffers. I explained already that he also has. He's really good in conception, and his books are sold all over the world because he really can boil it down so people understand. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what you're doing, and I have no conclusion for everything, for anything, because. But that's a nice thing. You have just to do the things by yourself. I'm from an older generation, as you could see, and you're the next generation, so you have to take things in your own hands and take care. I already told Ota that he's out in 2 years because you are taking over, and he was already admitting that probably it will go this way. So please, take over. My conclusion is of course easy. For me it's clear what's going on. Okay, thank you. Do we have questions? Do we have questions? Okay, already. I talked long enough. So thank you once again.